Hello and welcome you all for this second part of the video presentation based on the topic Descriptive Multivariate Analysis. Myself Dr. Kondekar from Walchand Institute of Technology, Solapur. This video is for the undergraduate engineering students learning and exploring the courses like data analytics. So again, this is the data set I am referring for the multivariate analysis. So you could find that there are around 7 different attributes and then 14 different instances. This is basically a contact list. So we talked about the interpretation of all these values in the video 1. So I have this type of multivariate data where I will find that I'm finding that there are some of the attributes which are quantitative, few of the attributes are qualitative. So the author has managed that there should be all different types of different scales available here for the multivariate analysis. So now how I can have the multivariate statistical parameters calculated? So simple. Once you know how to make the analysis of univariate data, so dispersion univariate statistics parameters calculated for each of the attribute, and then if you represent this in the tabular format, so that becomes our that becomes our statistical analysis of this multivariate data. So here if you find that I am representing all the 4 attributes statistical insights about what is the amplitude. Amplitude means what is the difference between the minimum value and maximum value taken by that particular attribute. Then the interquartile range, so the difference between the third quartile value and the first quartile value, so that difference represents IQR. Then mean absolute deviation calculated, and then standard deviation. So these are the statistical parameters calculated for the 4 attributes which we had talked about in the earlier slide as a part of data. Now instead of considering only one attribute, so you can have 2 attributes, and then I want to know what is the relationship between those 2 attributes in terms of statistical parameters like covariance and correlation, which we talk about bivariate analysis at the time of bivariate analysis. So now how I can extend this same thing for the multivariate data. So here that analysis becomes a formation of a table where the rows are representing 4 different attributes, and then columns are representing again 4 different attributes and then the covariance values are calculated. We talked about how to calculate the covariance, correlation, that too Pearson correlation, then Spearman rank correlation coefficient. So these are calculated here. So if you look at here, so the covariance between the years and maximum temperature is 5.82. If you look at the formula for calculation, so you'll find that if I get the covariance between the years and maximum temperature with some value, same covariance value I am getting for the covariance between the years and maximum temperature, so one and the same. So if you look at this diagonally, you will get the replication of the values, okay, a diagonal reflection you may say. Same is true for the Pearson correlation coefficient also. So you know that correlation coefficient takes values between this -1 to 1. So this is how the correlation values are calculated for the different attributes and are represented here. Now the correlation values and that covariance values can be visualized, and this is the representation. This is the representation of a matrix of the scatter plot. So now matrix of the scatter plot means multiple attributes like this maximum temperature, height, weight and years are visualized here with the scatter plot. So if you look at, you may say this is the scatter plot where x-axis represents the weight of the contact person and y-axis represents the maximum temperature. So again here if you look at this, x-axis is representing the maximum temperature and y-axis here is representing the weight. So if you find then these 2 graphs are representing the similar kind of information, and then so if you have these 4 attributes visualized, so 4 by 4 means 16 different attributes, 16 different relationships can be visualized here, but this diagonal part is representing the attribute value itself, because there is no meaning of having the same attributes plotted on x axis as well as y axis. So just the names of the attributes are mentioned over here. So this is the matrix of the scatter plot. So instead of having the similar values, if you find in the earlier visualization, whatever information available here, similar information was available on the other side of the diagonal. So what is done here is, instead of just representing the same information, what is added here is the correlation values which we calculated for that multivariate analysis. So that table we calculated the correlation. So this 0.27, what it indicates? This 0.27 is the correlation between the attribute weight and maximum temperature. This 0.94 is the correlation between the attribute height and weight. So correlation value closer to 1 indicates that the strong relationship between the attributes, like let us say the weight of the person is increasing, maybe the height of the person will also higher or increasing. So that strong relationship gets reflected with the higher value of this correlation coefficients, as compared to, if you compare here, I am getting 0.27 as the correlation between the weight and maximum temperature. It indicates that there is no or there is a weak relationship between the weight of the person and what temperature that person was having in his or her area, maybe for last month average temperature. So there is no relation. That gets reflected by lower value of the correlation coefficient here. So then there can be a correlogram drawn. So what can be done is, instead of representing those values, what can be done is, those values can be represented by different gray levels, and higher the gray level means the darker this particular square indicates the higher value of the correlation. So like that also you can have the representation. So this is a representation called as correlogram. So where the correlation coefficient, instead of representing it as a value, it is represented with different gray levels. Like that, quite interesting representation here is called as heat map, where the attribute values are represented by the different shades of a particular color. So whatever instances you are having, all those instances are represented over here, and the attributes taken, like let us say height values taken, are represented by the different levels or different shades of this particular color. So this is called as heat map. So this is the heat map for the 4 attributes represented. This is very good representation. Many times we are visiting the website. So infographic is one of the approach where multiple sources of information are there, and all those information part is represented in a single visualization. Sometimes we call it as a dashboard also. So this infographic where different visualizations, different statistical parameters, different tabular information, graphical representation is there, and they are talking about multiple attributes, just insights within the same dashboard. So if you look at here, this AS results 2016 are just visualized here with reference to the different aspects. So this representation is called as infographics. So where different quantitative, qualitative attributes are represented. And at last, this is something called as a word cloud representation. So simple, if you have some text information, so if you look at, this is the word cloud drawn for this text information. So what is basically a word cloud? So for forming the word cloud, repeatedly use words like maybe articles are neglected, and then what is done is, if you look at here, the highest font you are getting for this word called as text, what it indicates? It indicates that in this text paragraph, text word is the most frequent word. So if you look at, many times you will find the word text. Here you will find text, 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 text. So that gets reflected, that frequency of the occurrence of that particular word gets reflected in this word cloud. Higher the font size of a particular word, indicating the higher frequency. Lower the font, lowest font means least frequent. Let us say this word is with the least font. What it indicates? So this is the least frequent word in this particular paragraph. So this is a quite interesting representation of this textual information, one insight about what is the frequency of the words present in this particular paragraph. So that is represented as a visualization. We call it as a word cloud. So these are the different references used for this video presentation. Thank you.